All right, so today's roundtable is about 310 permitting, and Samantha Tappenbeck from Flathead and Becky Clements from Gallatin are going to lead the discussion. I'll keep an eye on the chat, so if you have anything to put in the chat, go ahead and do so, and I'll keep an eye on things. So Becky and Samantha, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, all. I first want to make sure you guys can hear me okay. All right, great. All right, now I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I'm going to try to do sharing my actual screen, and we'll see how that goes. Do you guys see a PowerPoint?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I can no longer see you. So yeah, if there's like a question or something like that we want to pause for, Chris, if you could just shout at me, that'd be great.
I will do that.
Okay, so yeah, we're talking about the process of 310 permitting from a conservation district staff perspective. You'll get a couple different perspectives from, me from Flathead CD, and then Becky and Audra from Gallatin CD, and there's probably 58 different perspectives on permitting. So, take this information, I guess, with a grain of salt a little bit, but hopefully there's some useful information for you to take away for your district. But feel free to pause me along the way with any questions, or if you have a comment about something, I'm happy to discuss anything in more detail. So I'll just start with kind of a quick overview of the Natural Streambed and Land Preservation Act, the NSLPA for short. This is also known as the 310 Law, and that is named after the number of the bill that was carried to the Senate, so bill number 310 at the time, back in 1975. So the NSLPA, it codifies the protections for streams in Montana in our Constitution, because the MCA is our Constitution, and it delegates authority to conservation districts to administer that law. So, the intent of the NSLPA is it's essentially the policy of the state of Montana to protect the natural rivers and streams and the lands and property immediately adjacent to them in their natural and existing state. So that's paraphrasing a little bit. The actual intent of the law is quite long, but that's the idea with the 310 law. And there's some important pieces of law to be aware of when it comes to the NSLPA. Of course, there's the Montana Code annotated, and I put the relevant sections of the MCA up on the screen there. There's the Administrative Rules of Montana, or ARM for short, and those are the agency regulations and standards that are used to implement, interpret, or set policy. So those rules describe an agency's organizations and procedures and policies or practices. And then districts in Montana are a political subdivision of the state of Montana, and we're housed under the DNRC Conservation Districts Bureau. So we have to follow those procedural rules for DNRC as laid out in ARM. And then there are the adopted rules, and those are used by a conservation district for the implementation of the NSLPA, and they're the specific policies and procedures and standards that are adopted by a district. And once they are adopted, they become law. So the DNRC provides a set of model rules that are just that, used as a model or a template for a conservation district to consider and adopt. And then once they're adopted, they are law, and those are the regulations for the district. And so Flathead CD has a set of adopted rules. Those contain all of the standards and policies and the model rules, and actually a little bit more. We actually have a set of very specific construction standards and specifications in our rules. And I'd be happy to share those with any district that might be interested in seeing how those are set up. But the model rules are really helpful for districts, as a really good starting point. I think at this point, all the districts have adopted their own set of adopted rules. So there are a number of forms that come from the state associated with administration of the NSLPA. There's the joint application, and then there's all the forms that go along with it. So there's an arbitration agreement, the team member report. There's the decision form, that's Form 273. That's the actual permit that gets issued. That's the decision form. There's a complaint form and then a notice of emergency as well. Flathead Conservation District has developed a number of additional forms just for, streamlining the process basically and providing, documentation of certain phases of the project or the process. So we put together a permit packet with all of our CD decision forms that go out. That's the actual permit that gets mailed out to the applicant. It comes in the form of a packet, and there's a attachment with some standardized language on that. And then we've got things like an extension and modification form. We kept getting requests for extensions or modifications that were kind of all over the place or scribbled on a napkin, literally. And so we tried to standardize that request form. And then we have a complaint inspection report, an emergency inspection report, a work completion form, and a follow-up inspection form. So we make all of these forms available to the public on our website and in the office in hard copy format as well. And along those same lines, we've kind of developed some tools and resources to streamline the process of permitting. And one of those is, kind of the information that we put out to the public. We create an application packet for our hard copy forms that we offer here in the office. And so we take a little 2-pocket folder and we put together 310 permit packets, and that contains the joint application, the instructions, a copy of our adopted rules, a 310 process summary document, which is just an overview very generally of the process that the applicant can expect once they apply for a permit. And that would include things like the timeline for decision and when they can expect to actually get a permit in hand if it is approved. And then what their responsibilities are as the applicant as well in terms of signatures and authorizations. We have also realized, after a number of years, that facilitating a smooth meeting and the decision making is important when you're handling a large volume of 310s and complaints and emergencies and all that, and especially when they're getting increasingly complicated. We're looking for ways to make the process more efficient. And, it's also our duty in a way as a conservation district to ensure the due process and equal protection under the law so that everyone is treated the same, when they go through this process of applying for a permit or notifying us of an emergency, et cetera. So we try to standardize the process to improve efficiency and accountability for everybody who's involved in the process. And then it also ensures consistency in decision making as well. So that becomes really important, that consistency and standardization becomes really important, especially when you get into dispute resolution or litigation of any kind around a decision. So we've put together some tools that we hope standardize the process and also make it easier to handle efficiently the volume of 310s that our Board of Supervisors is dealing with. And so we've put together an application review worksheet. So that goes out with every new application that we've received to the supervisor that's assigned to that area so that they can kind of work through the application and make sure that they understand all of the information that was provided by the applicant, and then they can provide that information to the full board. And so towards that end, we also put together a presentation guidance document, and that is to basically walk the supervisors through the information that they need to present to the full board of supervisors. Because at Flathead CD, we have designated areas in our conservation district, and only the area supervisor and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks representative receive new applications. And so they have to present that information to the full board of supervisors. The full board does not have an opportunity to review the applications as part of our regular process, except what is presented to them during a regular board meeting by the area supervisor. And I don't know if I can like share at the same time as I'm sharing a PowerPoint, but oh, hold on. I'm going to try something here.
You can stop your PowerPoint and then share the documents.
I know, I was so like sure that I was going to be able to do both because I shared screen and not have to go back and forth, but we'll see. All right. I'll just share a couple things. Okay, can you guys see a PDF document?
Yes, the guidance
Okay,
document.
so
Yep.
yeah, this is that presentation guidance document, and it's for the area supervisors, and it walks them through like, here's the information that you need to share during the regular board meeting to the full board of supervisors in order for them to be informed enough to make a decision on that application or complaint or notice of emergency. So this one is specific to applications, so they need to go over the basics of the information that was provided, the type of project and description, what the potential impacts are. They need to share the findings from the team member report, request additional input from Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and from the applicant or the public, and then go ahead and make a motion for discussion on that. And then so towards that end, in order to standardize the process of decision making, we provide motion guidance. And these are printed like as posters on our boardroom wall so that the board during the meeting can look up and say, okay, I've got this application, I'm going to make a motion as follows. And it's basically prompts for how to word those motions. And it kind of walks them through each of these different scenarios and the decisions that they could make in the wording on those motions. So if they're modifying or extending an application or a permit rather, if there's a complaint, how they would phrase that decision in the form of a motion, and then for emergencies, the decisions and wording for those motions. So we found that to be helpful, and it kind of is a quick reference for the supervisors during the meeting to be able to like keep motions simple and consistent for all of the decisions that get made. All right, I'm going to try this again. Okay. Can you guys see the PowerPoint then?
Yep. We're back to that.
All right. So there is also this document, which I've found to be very helpful in dealing with 310s and Flathead Conservation District it's a document from DNRC, and it's a compilation of all the legal opinions that have been offered over the years around 310s. Those are available on the Conservation District Bureau's website, or that document's available rather, and it's helpful. I think that DNRC is updating that right now so that it's in a more like readable format, but I often reference that, so I thought I would share that here, but I'll circle back to the more complicated legal stuff in just a bit. I wanted to really briefly go over, I guess, the duties of each of the roles involved in 310 administration. Specifically, since we're talking about the staff perspective, for Flathead CD, our staff, we're receiving applications. So we do just like a preliminary check when somebody submits an application that they've filled out all the required elements of the application and that it's been formatted correctly, they've attached a drawing, and they've signed the application. And that's the extent of the staff review on that. So we're just receiving applications. We then process that application, we're creating the file, we're updating the database, and then we're sending it out to the area supervisor and FWP. And then they take it from there for the application review. The supervisors at Flathead CD, according to our rules, they have to accept the application formally during a regular board meeting. So conservation districts, per the law, can delegate that authority. And some districts, as I understand, have delegated the authority to accept applications to staff. But at Flathead CD, the staff only receives applications. We do not formally accept applications until it's done at a regular meeting. And our board of supervisors handles that under the consent agenda. And so we accept all new applications as complete and for a project that will alter or modify a perennial flowing stream. If there's something like that needs to be addressed, for example, if an application is not complete and it should not be accepted, they pull that one off of the consent agenda and we handle that under regular business. So that's kind of how we streamline that accepting the application process. And that is important because per the law and per the adopted rules, from the time the application is accepted, that's when the timeline that is outlined in the rules for administration of the permit applications begins. So that's a really important time to document all of that. So following acceptance of the application, we're sending out the notice of inspection to the applicant and coordinating those on-site inspections. And then following the decision, we process and compile the permit and send that out to the applicant. Okay, so I wanted to kind of get into the staff perspective on, providing permitting information to applicants and to the public, because we at Flathead CD have kind of learned a lot over the years about what is important to do, what is important that you don't do. And so I kind of wanted to go over that. But I wanted to start with, this graphic that's on the screen. It's basically like a simplified representation of permitting jurisdiction, and it's on the DNRC website. It's in the Montana Stream Permitting Guidebook, that little flip book that we give out to folks. And, it's meant to, like, the wording of it is, it's to help the applicant in determining what permits they might need for their project. But I find that problematic in a way because when it comes to the 310 law, it suggests that it is a determination that the applicant can make themselves as opposed to the Board of Supervisors. But in the law, it is the Board of Supervisors that needs to make that determination on whether or not a 310 permit is needed. And so when we're getting that information out to the public, it's hard to relay that. And especially when we have, graphics like this that are kind of, I guess, narrow in like the specific areas, like the jurisdictional areas where a permit may or may not be necessary. So I thought I just wanted to kind of point that out because it's important to exercise caution, like when you're interacting with the public. Like we'll often get calls or people will stop by the office and they describe their proposed project, or they're like, well, I'm on this stream, and this is what I want to do. Do I need to apply for a permit for that project? And we as staff cannot make that decision. That's a board's decision. And they always want you to tell them whether or not they need a permit for that project. But what we have to do is just tell them to apply, because it's the application review process that is going to get them the decision and the documentation that they need on that. Just a phone call to the office is not going to get them anything in writing that says you do or do not need a permit for this project. They simply have to go through the application process. And I always refer them to the adopted rules for those definitions and the process that's outlined there, and the standards themselves, so that they understand how that application review process works.
There's a question in the chat. Maybe I can interrupt you because it's sort of timely.
Yeah.
Kelly Arterburn from Park asked, what is the Flathead Conservation District timeline for receiving applications and conducting site inspections?
Yeah, okay, so it's outlined in the rules as, from the time we accept an application, we set an on-site inspection within 20 days of, oh boy, I better make sure I tell you the right thing. Let's see. Yeah, we set an on-site inspection within 20 days of receiving the application. Basically, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks they're technically the ones in the law that within 5 working days of receipt of the application, they have to tell the board whether or not they want an on-site inspection. They technically make that call, but that's not really how our process works. So we call a team together within 20 days of receipt of the application, and within 30 days of the inspection, the team has to recommend approval, modification, or denial of the project to the supervisors. So we do that at the following 310 permitting meeting. And so we're telling applicants to expect a permit in hand within 60 to 90 days of time of application. So that can be drawn out if additional information is needed, if they the board specifically requests information, but generally that's the timeline that we're working on. All right. So, when it comes to understanding jurisdiction, there's indeed criteria for applicability of the NSLPA, the 310 law, like as written in the rules, what streams do or do not fall under the category of the NSLPA. But again, the actual decision on whether or not a stream or a water body is jurisdictional under the NSLPA, it should be assessed during the application review. And it's complicated, right? Like these streams aren't, like the hydrology can be really complicated, and that jurisdictional line is left intentionally vague in the law so that the supervisors and FWP can go out on the ground and look at the various factors that are site specific and make a determination on whether or not a project does or does not require a 310 permit. And so applications are considered on a case-by-case basis, right? And those decisions are application specific. So we take jurisdiction over projects, and that's based on whether or not there will be impacts to the bed or banks of the stream. A lot of people will contact the district and they'll want to know, like, what's the setback distance from the mean high water mark or the top of the bank, behind which I don't need a 310 permit, like they want a line in the sand, and you can understand why, because other regulations, like if you're going to get a building permit or a floodplain permit, they do have these very distinct lines, jurisdictional lines in the sand, but the 310 permit does not. And I think that can be really confusing for applicants. And so we try to, provide information about how the application review process works in as simple as of terms as we can. But it's tough for the applicant to understand, I think. But I think importantly for staff, we have to know our role, and we can't make decisions on 310 permits. We can't determine jurisdiction. And then also we need to know where to refer applicants to, because they often will ask the conservation district, like, oh, do I need a floodplain permit or do I need a 404 permit for this project? And it's really helpful to be able to say, no, but here's the specific agency or contact that you should reach out to about that. And you can submit the joint application to them. All right, so I'm already like well over on my time here, so let me move along.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Cindy from Tool asks if there are specifics on boring under a river for a gas line. And I'm going to say from my history, that's different from district to district. My board requires permits if they're boring under a river or creek or not. So.
Yeah, I'll second that. We also require permits for that, those kind of utilities works, and we have very specific standards in our adopted rules for like the depth of boring, the entry point for boring, and all of that. So in terms of like patterns we're seeing from a staff perspective, we're handling a lot of 310s. It seems like we're dealing with a high volume these days, and we've got in Flathead County over 600 perennial flowing streams. They've got complex hydrology, and we've got a large population that is rapidly developing land in Flathead County. So, and everybody wants to live near water, right? So we're dealing with a lot of permit issues, it seems like. And most people aren't aware of the 310 law, and that's a challenge. I think we all probably deal with that challenge. And it's tough to understand, it's a really nuanced process. It's got these really specific definitions, these confusing jurisdictional determinations, and that makes for more complicated 310s, all of those factors coming together. It just seems like they're more complicated. We're ordering more technical reviews these days because it's got a complicated hydrology, or they've done work on a stream without a permit, and maybe that work is it doesn't meet our standards, but we don't know what appropriate corrective action might be considering that complicated hydrology. It just seems to be more and more complex these days. We see a lot of applications for bank stabilization and armoring stream banks, which kind of aligns with the fact that we've got a booming population here and everybody wants to live on the water. It's like the, development around water doesn't really jive with the fact that streams like to move, and so everybody wants to stabilize their banks and protect their property and prevent the stream from moving, and it channelizes them, locks them into place. And so we see a lot of that, but we can permit bank stabilization per the standards in our rules. We're dealing with complicated jurisdictional issues, which I can get into in detail if we'd like. And then lots of violations because a lot of people don't know about the 310 law. So the staff are behind the scenes coordinating all of these different things on the administrative side of things. So we're we're contracting for the technical reviews and specifying the deliverables to come out of those. We're dealing with the notifications on the violations and civil penalty payments, that sort of thing. All right, so this is the last kind of thing I'll touch on, and I'm sorry, Becky and Audra, for taking up more time than I should, but I just wanted to point out, because we deal with disputes and litigation a lot at Flathead CD, but I think a conservation district that standardizes its process and is consistent in decision making and compliant with open meeting law and record keeping will minimize the disputes that we have. But whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. Like there's always disputes when it comes to water. And so it's inevitable that a CD will eventually encounter some sort of dispute resolution over a permitting decision. And there's different ways that are outlined in the law and in our rules to deal with that. There's declaratory ruling, arbitration, and judicial review. Conservation districts have legal services available to them. The first stop for that, as out legal resources for conservation. If they're
you're cutting out a little bit, Samantha.
Oh, I don't know. Might be internet stability. Is that any better?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So there's the county attorney's office. If they're not able to provide legal services, because of capacity, or if there's a conflict of interest, then conservation districts should approach the Agency for Legal Services, ALS. That's through the Department of Justice. And then the next stop would be the attorneys that are on contract with the DNRC Conservation Districts Bureau to provide legal assistance to conservation districts. So Flathead Conservation District has received full support from the attorneys that are contracted with DNRC, Kamisha and Caitlin. To date, we have not paid an attorney fee, a bill for legal services. But I can envision, that contract only goes so far. And so at some point, we might have to hire an attorney for something, but we've got several lawsuits going on or pending at this point. And if anyone's interested, I can give an update on those and kind of, I guess, go over what the staff role has been in that litigation. But at this point, I've taken up a lot of time, so I want to turn it over to Becky and Audra. And I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Samantha. Thank you. I'll share our screen. Let's see this one. Yeah. All right. Can you guys?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Oh no. Hold on. Technical difficulties. Why is it there? Press right click. Right. Center view. Okay. Can you still see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm Becky Clements, the district administrator here at Gallatin, and this is Audra Bell. She started with our district in January of this year with a new position in our office as the 310 coordinator. Our conservation district averages a bit over 100 310 applications a year. And when I started with the Gallatin in 2019, I immediately realized that our 310 management methods were not cutting it. The administrative needs and the requirements for over 100 310 permits is a lot, not to mention the actual physical storage for that amount of paperwork is massive. Shortly after I started, an amazing partnership with a partner organization literally fell into my lap. I was brand new when the idea of the shared online 310 processing and management was broached to me, but I knew that we needed to give it a go because we just were struggling here. And our board thought so too, they agreed. So Gilly is an example of the ways that we are working to try to streamline the 310 process on our end. So, sorry. Like Samantha mentioned, there's certain info on 310 applications that is absolutely necessary and required by the state of Montana. It was really frustrating how much time and effort that I would spend trying to track down this required information that simply was not provided for one reason or another on the application. Like the address would be left off, the section, township, and range would be left off. essential construction details would be skipped or really scarce. So Gilly has an asterisk field on the application that offers the solution to this. It ensures that applicants cannot submit the application without these essential fields filled in. And the dashboard, which is being featured here, offers an easy view of the applications that we have in our system and that have been sent back as this changes requested here, or that are under review. A large amount of time at our conservation district goes into answering 310 related phone calls for the public, whether it is if something is permitted or an applicant has lost their paperwork. GCD's process when I first started was to search a PDF library, which is largely unsearchable. And it was super frustrating. It took up way too much time and made me appear really unprofessional, in my opinion. The map that's featured here in Gilly is one of my absolute favorite features and works to streamline this customer service and professionalism portion of 310 management. The eventual goal for this map is for it to be a forward-facing feature of Gilly that is viewable by the public. It's still being developed a bit, but eventually our vision is for CDs to be able to put this map on their websites and that the public can view it before they actually call the CD to see if they can answer some of these questions that we get all the time themselves. The CD administration side of Gilly is also streamlined, and all the materials associated with an application are housed within Gilly for easy retrieval and review.
All right. So yeah, with that, we have a few different districts that are working with Gilly currently. And as we're still working through some of the kinks in it, if you guys, the early adopters who are already working with it, if they have any comments or questions about the application or any of the prompts available, let us know, because we're still working with the Gilly team to work out some of those kinks as well. So just a heads up there. So as far as my position, I started, as Becky mentioned, my name's Audra. I started in January with the Gallatin Conservation District. I work approximately 20 hours a week helping out landowners just answer questions, getting all of the 310 inspection paperwork filed, and then scheduling the inspections. So since I started, I've been able to streamline a few things within the 310 process, and specifically around the 310 inspections. So first off, I wanted to mention who our inspection team is. So Gallatin Conservation District is kind of special because they do hire a consultant firm, or we have an engineering firm that is contracted to perform all of the site inspections and deliver the information from inspections to the board at the time of the meeting. So we have 3 different engineers who come out just on a rotating basis to complete the inspections. And they do a great job. It provides another perspective from someone who knows what's going on and knows the design component of inspection or of 310s. So that's really awesome, as well as FWP has also hired a consultant who we unfortunately don't have anymore. His name was Buddy. He was on for
30 years.
Yeah, 30 years. But he retired last month. So we're working with a new biologist as well. So that's our inspection team. One of the ways I've been able to streamline the process for just getting paperwork shuffled through to the inspection team is utilizing OneDrive or a shared folder. OneDrive works best for us because we do a ton of PDF forms and just PDF formats of all of the documents. So this allows us to, once I receive an application, either from Gilly or a physical copy or an email, I'll file it in our personal system, and then I send it over. I make a copy and put it in a OneDrive folder that the team has access to. So this has been a huge help, just with the streamlining, so we don't have to email back and forth a ton. So in this picture, you can see there's all of the forms that we've received or the applications we've received. They have drive directions for their day out in the field, as well as a place to upload folders once they're completed. The other way that we've been able to streamline the 310 process is through online inspection forms. So instead, honestly, up until like 2 months ago, we were doing paper copies of all of the team inspection reports. And so recently I was able to find an app that would download the copies of the team report, and give them an opportunity to pre-fill all of the information on the back end. So that would be me filling out the application, the team report, so the page on the right or the left-hand side. And so I pre-fill that, and then the team has access to that via an iPad out in the field. And once they fill that out and submit it, it gets sent back to the website that I have on my computer, and I can access that. So on the right-hand side, this is our team report at this point in time. I'm still working out the formatting of how it downloads, but this is what we have for our folder and what our team report looks like. So I've been using JotForm. And so one of the main considerations is that we oftentimes do our site inspections outside of service. So that was one of the considerations we had to take into account, to make sure that our app would work without service, which this does a great job. It has an offline version. And then once the tablet gets back in service, it will download directly to the website. So this is the back end of what we see, and this is all of our team reports, as well as a few other documents that we have available. So I've also done a 318 authorization, which is on the left-hand side, and then we have a complaint team report, which is on the right-hand side. As far as the success through this, our team loves the digital format, not having to worry about paperwork at this point in time. When I was going through kind of the developmental process with this, I made sure with Haley and with FWP that these forms were going to be acceptable by DNRC and FWP and DEQ. So the formatting is not something that we really have to consider all that much, as long as the information is on the page. So that has been a huge way of streamlining our process. It makes there be a lot less paperwork associated with this, and I can easily download all of these forms and put them in the files once we have them. So that's been great. One thing I also wanted to mention is eventually Gilly will have this process available through that platform. They're just still working out some of those processes and figuring out the offline format for those forms. So yeah.
Thanks, Audra. So to talk about some of our challenges that we experience here in Gallatin, it's, the same as a lot of other CDs out there are experiencing. A lot of our challenges are largely due to the rapid growth that we have experienced in the past and continue to experience here in Gallatin County. Much of our growth is from out-of-state populations that don't have water laws that are similar to Montana's. So lack of education is a large part of the problem. And unfortunately, this results in a lot of complaints and unpermitted work. Another struggle for us is that Gallatin County has over 1,000 miles of irrigation ditches running through our valley. And ditches are difficult in our 310 world. Is it jurisdictional or not? Does operations or maintenance impact the river? Does it flow year round? These are questions that we ask the inquiring public like on the weekly. Ditches are essential, but they are difficult within our 310 world. Our board has previously adopted a stream ditch designation within our model rules, and this designation refers to ditches that happen to pick up stream water along its way or vice versa. It impacts jurisdictional authority that GCD has over a water body. And naturally, GCD gets many questions about it and spends a decent amount of time trying to decipher this within Gallatin County. Sorry. Okay. Lately, we've had a few 310 matters that involve bad or inaccurate calls by previous representatives of GCD. This is an unfortunate and rare occurrence, but it's not surprising given that GCD has processed thousands of applications. It goes without stating that when something like that happens, it needs to be handled extremely delicately and with the absolute best customer service. I don't know about other districts, but a common occurrence in GCD is neighbors weaponizing the 310 law to get at their neighbors. We experience this on a frequent basis, and it's a frustrating issue to deal with. We had a guy submit somewhere in the vicinity of 5 or 6 complaints against his neighbor in 1 year. Another issue that's been plaguing us is the influx of on-channel ponds that are either inquired about, applied for, or illegally constructed. Ponds in general are being constructed rapidly in Gallatin County, but the on-channel ones are absolutely not permitted by our board. And we've had a few in recent memory that were violations that required extensive remediation. And one that went all the way to Gallatin County Justice Court. Speaking of court, we had a 310 application as well, just like Flathead, that went into litigation. The GCD Board of Supervisors decision was challenged regarding a decision that started as a complaint in our office in 2019, and it involved an on-channel pond. Here's an aerial of that on-channel pond. The landowner and responsible party alleged that he received bad information from persons unauthorized to make such a call. So subsequently, he dug a pond as an amenity for his proposed glamp ground on what was ultimately determined by Gallatin County Justice Court to be within our jurisdictional authority. So GCD has been through the litigation process as well. And I just want to say that we received much guidance and assistance, just like Flathead has experienced from DNRC, a legal team. Mainly, we worked with Caitlin Overland. This process took years to complete. It just wrapped up. It's 4.5 years later. And same thing, we never received a bill for any of the work that Caitlin did. And she was there for us every step of the way, just as the same with the DNRC stream coordinator at the time, who was Jason Garber. I also received help and advice from those that had been through the litigation process. So Flathead helped me out a lot. So to those of you that are new, I just want to say to rely on this EO team. Somebody out there somewhere has experience with whatever you need help with. As for the declaratory ruling and subsequent court case, and the outcomes and the lessons learned bit, I received great advice from both the former and current stream coordinator with DNRC, both Jason and Haley. And that is just to follow your model rules exactly. Do everything by the book and your CD will be just fine. As long as you do everything on the up and up, the law is on your side. So follow the rules and carefully document everything. With that, are there any questions?
So there have been a couple of questions in the chat. One was from Samantha at Flathead. She wanted to know, Audra, if you have to set up special permissions or provide Microsoft accounts to give the inspection team access to view or edit the shared OneDrive folder.
Yeah, so FWP does utilize Microsoft, their programming. I don't know if our biologist has been able to get in without like going off of the Wi-Fi. That's one thing that he has issues with. But as far as our inspection team, for the engineering firm, they have no issues getting in. And once we utilize it for our agenda and all of the meeting materials for our board members as well. We have a different folder. And once they have the link for that shared folder, they can just go in and access that at any point in time. So every time I update something, I send an email to the team just saying, hey, there's a new application in here. Will you take a look at it and see if we need to inspect? So.
Okay.
We are like full paper records, everything paper. It's something we're like looking into moving away from in the distant future, I'm sure. But I was struggling with OneDrive because like our board of supervisors has Microsoft emails, like designated organizational emails for Flathead CD. It's like pete@flatheadcd.org. But they just have like an email essentials license. And so anyway, I had set up this OneDrive folder thinking like, okay, this will be great. Like they can put their on-site inspection photos in this folder rather than having to bring in a flash drive or try to put, some of them were putting them on a disk. And I'm like, we don't even have disk drives anymore. What happens? We just don't have a standardized way of doing it, but they couldn't do it. Like they could view, but they couldn't add. They couldn't like edit the content of the folder. So anyway, I don't know what the problem is, but I'm sure it's a functions thing.
Yeah, I bet it is. You could also look into Google Drive. I just think OneDrive works better for us because we deal with permits or not PDFs all the time. So
thanks.
There was another question from Jess Beagles. She wanted to know how much does using Gilly and JotForm cost?
As of right now, we are not incurring any costs for Gilly. We have kind of been the guinea pig and have worked closely with the organization that's helping us to develop it. So there hasn't been any cost to us. I will say that the cost associated with Gilly is being ironed out with DNRC, with the goal to eventually have it be provided to the districts that want to use it. And what about JotForm?
We're on the free account currently. We might need to upgrade, but it's not much. This was just kind of once Gilly comes up with their forms, we'll definitely transfer over to that. But I just was ready to not deal with paper. So JotForm, the free version, has been covering what we need.
I do know that DNRC, that contract that they are writing with Gilly, they are basically on pause until after the next fiscal year starts. So at that time, we'll have more information then.
So that's
any other questions?
Those were the questions in the chat. I don't know if anybody wants to pipe up and turn on their microphone.
This is Tunley. I have a few questions. Chris, did you say you're using Gilly right now, or
you know, we are using Gilly. I have not found it to be particularly great because nobody's using it. We literally get maybe, I think last year we had 3 applications or 4 applications through Gilly out of 45. So it's not really saving us any time. I'm hopeful that will change over time. That's where we are now.
We had to push it with applicants. It's the first on our website. It's the first way to apply. We still have the paper form on there, a link to the paper form, but we put it further down on the list. And if anybody asks why or what we're doing, we explain it, and that, better tracking, better record keeping, better experience for them if they need to retrieve their permit, things like that. But we have to push it a bit. And same with engineering firms that have been applying with us for years. They just submit the same form that they've been submitting for years. So we have to work at it.
My second question, Becky, is with your contract with your consultants, how does that work? Is it per application? Is it just a retainer fee? How does that work?
It's basically a retainer fee, kind of. We contract for 2-year contracts with them to just provide any and all 310 technical assistance. And it's under the amount that we would need to go out to bid. So that's how it works. But we pay them approximately $125 an hour. Sure. Is how that works.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Especially with everything getting as complicated as it is.
I know. Yeah, it's
not
their
just
expertise
anymore.
Yeah, their expertise that they provide is definitely needed these days.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Thank you.
Any other questions from folks?
I just want to make a quick comment. I don't know about you guys, but we've taken some jurisdiction on some projects that, of course, aren't on the stream, but impact the stream. We've all had those, I'm sure. I have found a lot of times that a lot of our other permitting partners or permitting agencies tend to sometimes wait for the district to kind of take that lead role, which I think has become a little more complicated as well. Even Montana Department of Transportation has been aware of stuff, but won't take their jurisdiction they're supposed to, or take on that authority until the conservation district comes in and says, hey, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here, kind of thing. Just curious if anyone else has been experiencing some of that. I find it very strange that they think we have that authority or whatever, but
yeah, we're experiencing that here too.
Same here.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if we're experiencing that so much outside of like the standard application review process. I mean, our county planning and zoning, which administers the floodplain permits, they always tell applicants, don't come to us until you have a 310 permit. And so they'll kind of send people to the district first in the review and decision-making process, but not necessarily turning a blind eye to any violations or, passing that jurisdictional authority over to the district. I will say that we're right now involved in some really major violations on a stream and a landowner that we actually went to the Supreme Court with a few years back. Anyway, he's at it again. And there are other agencies, regulatory agencies, that are processing violations of those laws as well, like the Army Corps and DEQ are involved because they've issued violations of the Clean Water Act and a violation for not being in compliance with their stormwater permit. Anyway, my experience so far in that situation is I'm sure we're on the precipice of going to court over this, but what I've found so far is that the conservation district, because of our authority under the law, we are able to we're so much further along in the processing of that violation than those other agencies are able to be. I'm sure because of the volume of violations that they're handling, Whereas we're just right here in Flathead County, you know, they're dealing with the whole state and like the whole nation in some cases, but you know, just their process seems to move a lot slower than our process is able to move. And for example, like we had an interagency meeting about this specific issue to see like if our board of supervisors would have the option to move forward with like court-ordered restoration as like a collaborative approach. Like if the Army Corps and the EPA are going to require, you know, more stringent restoration requirements, then can we just tag team onto that, you know? And the answer was basically like, not really, because we're so much further along in our process already. We've got to go ahead and move forward with the requirements for corrective action, and they'll do their own and catch up later, but they're like way behind where we're at. So I wonder if that has anything to do with it too.
I just find that they won't even, I mean, you know, we had a violation that we came in on. It was a road up a mountain, you know, that wasn't necessarily on the stream, but it was affecting it due to runoff and stuff. And MDT was like, oh yeah, we had right of way issues, but we didn't want to get involved until the district weighed in or whatever. And it's just like, that's really odd to me, because this could have been prevented right off the bat, kind of thing. We've had a few of those other issues. As far as floodplain goes, you know, we have floodplain requesting everything that goes on in a floodplain, whether it impact, whether we have jurisdiction or authority or anything on it. They want a letter from us. So someone might be, you know, nowhere near us, but they are in a mapped floodplain, and floodplain has to have a letter from us before they will move ahead for this applicant. We had someone just repairing their deck, and floodplain said, you have to have a letter from all of these people, including Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Of course, it's a private individual. It's not a government entity. They wanted something written up about the 124 permit. It's like, that doesn't even apply. Like, this isn't. So we're finding that we're having issues with that. And now I just have a standard letter that I'm like, oh, you want to clean up from your fire, your house burned down, and you have to have a permit from us. I mean, it's not anywhere near a stream. Here you go. Here's my form letter, kind of thing. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous, and it's taking a ton of time. And you know, there's just me. I'm the only full-time employee for Cascade CD. So, I mean, it's just like, just ridiculous. But I was just curious about some of those other violations. If you're finding that a lot of those agencies don't want to, well, what does the district say? Well, where is the district on that? How, you know, how's that working? So I'm just curious if some of you guys were having some of those same issues.
Feel your pain.
Yeah. Yeah, crazy.
All right. If there aren't any more questions, I guess we can wrap up. Does anybody else have anything to ask? I have asked the presenters for their slides and their other materials that they mentioned or referenced during their presentations. So I'll get those sent out to folks when I get a chance.
And I just want to say, yeah, really good stuff, you guys. Thanks. And I love like some of the stuff, Samantha, you share with your board as far as, I mean, I don't have a board. My board does pretty good on making motions, but I think that that's some of that stuff that you have super helpful. If you'd be willing to share, I'd copy it. So, okay. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, everybody.
So for the area directors that are with the EO board, just stay on and we'll have our meeting now after this is done. And I'm going to hit stop recording.
Thank you, guys. That was great.
Good stuff.
Guys, bye.